Good evening and welcome to the Nittany Lions Sports Report. It is live here on Bob Long Sports, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, however you get your podcasts. Bob Long, Tyler Gelhaus alongside talking about the 1-0 Penn State Nittany Lions. And dare I say it, the Big Ten co-offensive player of the week, Sean Clifford. Whoa, what the were they watching the same game that I was? I mean, how the heck did that guy throw or be accountable for 5 touchdowns? Nay, 6 touchdowns, including a pick six thrown to Purdue's secondary. But Tyler, not to reveal my hand too much, but in my mind, a frustrating football game, a win that was great to have for a Penn State football fan, but my goodness, if you didn't leave that game feeling exhausted, I'm not sure what game you were watching.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, when you're talking about Clifford and Big Ten Player of the Week, I'm just or co Offensive Player of the Week for Big Ten. I'm not sure what kind of competition he was up against. Ohio State, Smith and Jigba got hurt. Stroud didn't light the world on fire. Neither did Henderson. Notre Dame played them very tough. Iowa with a conventional 7 points against who was it? South Dakota State, 2 safeties and a field goal, I believe. So there wasn't much lighting the world on fire across the Big Ten on offense this week. So when you look at a stat line, yeah, he played pretty well, but that well, I don't think so. Yes, an exhausting first game, Bob. You nailed it right there. At halftime, I was feeling very good, especially the way the half ended with the fumble and Penn State goes down. And I was kind of surprised. I don't know about you, but I was like, wow, really 20 seconds. They're nowhere near scoring or midfield, and they're going for it. I'm like, I guess why not? And then lo and behold, Clifford finds Strange, breaks it, big play, all the momentum in the world going into the half, feeling pretty good. And then the third quarter was pretty much a disaster. And you really had a lot of doubt. I mean, I know that I had a lot of doubt. And then especially after that Clifford fourth quarter pick six. But at the end of the day, again, the only thing that we see and care about is that W in the win column. And a lot of good, but a lot of area of improvement as well.
There's a lot to get to with this game as well, so we'll issue a little bit of a table of contents up front and do our best to get to all of it. First is we'll talk a little bit more about Sean Clifford's performance. Second, Drew Aller made an appearance and turned some heads, made a couple of mistakes, but we'll talk about his performance. Try to talk about the running game as well and what we think there. Was that a scheme issue, a personnel issue? What happened? Dropped footballs by the Penn State wide receiver. Big key to this game. And then talking defensively, right? Like what were some of the guys that showed up? What were some of the issues? I want to talk a lot about Joey Porter Jr. and the cornerbacks because I certainly have some thoughts on that. And that was quite the polarizing issue post game. And I think we want to talk a little bit about Purdue as well and where this team fits into the fabric of the Big Ten and what Penn State fans can take from this game. So let's start offensively, Tyler. We'll go offense and then defense, and I want to hear your endearing takeaway, or enduring, shall I say, takeaway from this one.
Offensively, what jumps off the bat, and you already touched on it, Bob, is the drop passes. Multiple drops. Parker Washington had an easy one on the screen. Keandre Lambert-Smith had 2, maybe 3 drops. Tyler Warren dropped one from Drew Aller that was right on his hands. I mean, all these passes were great, by the way. They were right there. Drew Aller threaded the needle in between 2 guys, really right into Warren's hands, couldn't make the play. And at the same time, I give guys like Warren and Lambert-Smith credit because they came back and made huge catches. Lambert-Smith for a touchdown later in the game, and Warren a key first down on that final drive. So they came back to him. They made those plays, but they have to clean up the drops. I mean, a lot of these weren't even contested balls. And I know that the quarterbacks, I'll call it quarterbacks, really didn't throw for a high percentage, but there's at least 5 drops that I can count And that's going to be the difference. And it almost was the difference against Purdue. Got to clean that up. That's the first thing that jumps out to mind. And second, I will say that the running back shuffle again. I think all backs pretty much had 30 yards rushing. Kevon Lee, obviously, with the game-winning touchdown on a reception wheel route at the end there. But I still am not quite sure this rotation, and I think it's going to drag on. And I just think watching all three of those backs, I'll throw Ford in there because he had a really nice fourth down play there. But when you talk about Lee, Singleton, and Allen just look different on the screen. They look faster, quicker. And I'm just curious to see how this is going to play out because I think that they're the two best backs. And I just hope they don't keep playing running back shuffle and then you get a guy that's cold off the bench. So that's kind of what jumped out to me the most.
Yeah, from a running back depth perspective, it was very much like a baseball batting order, right? Kevon Lee, Nick Singleton, and Katron Allen. And it was one drive for Lee, one drive for Singleton, one drive for Allen. By the time you get to the second half, you're basically just going through the lineup for the third time. Well, I think it's time to make a decision at that point and see who the hot hand is.
And even so, I mean, I know, why do you have to do drive by drive? I mean, There's no reason you can't mix them up for different reasons. I mean, 3rd and 1, bring in Lee or even Allen, a bigger back. I mean, or a 3rd and 7, bring in Ford. He's a good third down back. He has good hands. He has experience. He can pass block. I think you have to go more situational, not so much off of a script. Instead of saying, okay, I got to go, Lee, you're going here, like you just said. And it's what's going to happen is you have Lee starts the game, right? First series. Then it's going Singleton Allen series. It could be another 30 minutes of actual time before he goes back in. Then you're going to run into the issue of getting tight or cold, not having a ball in your hand too often, fumbling, all that kind of stuff is stuff that you have to think about. And I just wish that it didn't have to be so scripted and you go with the hot hand, situational. I think that's what they should do. And I'm hoping they do it here pretty soon.
I agree. I think when we talked about the preseason show, getting ready for this game as well as the rest of the season, Mike Yursich put up or shut up type time. Kirk Shiraka was let go for less, from not as bad a shortcomings as what we saw at times last year. And so it's put up or shut up. That's officially a big boy position. And James Franklin has a lot of resources a lot of money to throw at a big name coordinator if this doesn't work out and quick. And listen, I'm not calling for anybody's job at this point. They are 1-0, and that is impressive. But I think getting some type of system there and not being so mechanical with who's running back is going to go in when and where, I think that's a big deal. All that said, did not see Nick Singleton's best. Listen, a friend of the show, both the Singletons as well as our buddy Bruce Badgley, talked to Bruce, and he said he doesn't feel that they are running it to Nick Singleton's strengths, right? Singleton is a guy who's a single tailback, deep back, a lot of momentum when he gets the football going forward. I said, Bruce, that is not Penn State's offensive system. I'm sorry to tell you that, right? But it's a fair point that he brings up, that these kind of standing next to the quarterback in the shotgun, taking a ball, going sideways and kind of cutting up field, it does take away a little bit of momentum of these guys.
Sure.
There are creative ways to get the ball downhill from that type of formation, but we haven't seen it. It's more of, hey, I think Joel Klatt said it well, felt like they needed to run the ball first and second down almost to prove a point.
Every series, right.
And when it didn't work out and they needed to get points, they basically abandoned it. It was not weaved creatively into the offensive flow.
Right. I agree. I think it was a little obvious. I mean, it seemed like every first and second down was a run, and they'd get, which is 3rd and 3s are fine. I mean, they're better than 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, but it was happening. It was becoming too predictable. And the first run of Singleton's career was a nice little 9 or 10 yard run. They got him going more downhill. Now it was out of shotgun, I believe, but Penn State did go under center a lot, and gave the running backs the ability to get that running start downhill, which I like to see, and I hope they use it more. And I'm not going to discount it after one game that they're not running Nick Singleton to his strength. Interesting to note, though, from somebody that has watched him play for years now at the high school level, you have to figure that hopefully that the coaching staff is smart enough to say, hey, look, this is his strength. Let's run him this way and get the most out of him that way. I have confidence that they will, but definitely an interesting tidbit there.
Yep. Looking at the wide receivers a little bit, Mitchell Tinsley, he's a number one type of guy. He is a great complement to Parker Washington. I think Penn State has bona fide 1-2 punch there. Certainly, the rest of the receivers need to catch the football. But, man, Tinsley looked great. Big, strong guy. Can elude tackles. Looked sure-handed, certainly compared to some of the other ones out there.
Yeah.
I really like what you have in Mitchell Tinsley if you're a Penn State football fan. And if you're Sean Clifford, Drew Aller, whoever's going to step on the field as a quarterback, he's a safety blanket.
That's an incredible transfer pickup there. A guy that's played a ton of football at Western Kentucky, put up numbers there as pretty much their whole offense does because they're like air raid, I guess. But pleasantly surprised. I mean, not the fastest guy. I guess you could say he's deceptively fast, but good route runner, good hands, yards after the catch, which is amazing to see from a wide receiver, physical. He had a huge night. He had the touchdown, which Gus Johnson was so excited about. I don't know if you saw his reaction to the touchdown, but it was like he was reading off a paper and was like, oh, and that's a touchdown, Tinsley. For someone that's an exciting guy, Gus was not too thrilled about that. But at the end of the game, too, on that game-winning drive, I mean, he took, a 5-yard pass and took it 40 yards or so.
Gus was excited about that, though. Did you notice that?
He was. I think he was snoozing a little bit in the first quarter or the second quarter, whenever that touchdown was.
But he overstated that last drive. He said that was one of the best drives that I've seen in my years of watching football. Loosely quoted there. And don't get me wrong, it was a nice drive. Was that one of the best drives that you've ever seen?
This year in college football, it was.
Yeah, right. The first game of the year, aside from the week 0 games, sure.
Yeah. So, but going back to Tinsley, wide receiver with losing Dotson, and I know again this is only one game. That was a huge who's going to fill in? Okay, Washington's a nice slot player. Keandre Lambert-Smith will probably start and so on. And Tinsley has really grabbed that spot, and he is a security blanket. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Tyler Warren made a heck of a play down the stretch there on that drive. That was not a great throw. I mean, certainly Clifford
led him too far and got crunched, and he held on to it.
He sure did. I mean, I get it. That ball needs to have pace coming through a tight window, and it probably just missed its spot. But Tyler Warren, that's a heck of a play. Yeah. He has a chance to be a special tight end. They're going to need it, too, with Theo Johnson being banged up to start the year.
They're hoping to get him back on Saturday, so we'll see.
Are they? Okay. I was thinking it might not be next Saturday.
Hopeful. Yeah. They're hopeful for him.
Got it. Offensive line. I thought it was serviceable. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was awful. What I saw out there, Tyler, was a little bit of, stop me if you've heard this before on this podcast, happy feet from Sean Clifford and kind of abandoning what were half-decent pockets early at times, which led to more issues. It was not a great, not a sterling performance from the offensive line. I think Sean Clifford made it look worse than it actually was.
I would say that the offensive line, compared to what we're used to seeing them do lately, it was better than what we're used to, in my opinion.
Maybe with the exception of Caden Wallace. He looked awful, unfortunately.
Yes, and outside of him, I thought the pass protection was really, really good. I mean, I thought the run blocking was okay. Certainly room for improvement. But, yeah, I mean, Clifford still is going to have his happy feet. He threw off his back foot on that pick 6, which, if he just steps into that throw, he has Tinsley there. Yes, there's 4 guys in the vicinity, But if he steps into that instead of throwing it off his back foot, there's a good chance he completes that. So
Yeah,
I
I'll
don't know.
stop you there just to say about that throw, because we can't mince words,
Well, he
right?
shouldn't have thrown it, but
He's a pretty good college quarterback, generally
right.
speaking. May or may not take a team to a national title, which I know is what Penn State fans want to do. That throw right there is not a college football throw, and I'm not just talking about the results. It's what you said. The mechanics were poor. If you're going to throw one, you don't airmail it. You put it
No,
into the
right.
ground and put it high and wide. I mean, that is an interception 85% of the time that you throw the ball like that. And it's completely inexcusable. And Sean Clifford would tell you the same thing. It was a lapse in judgment. It was a lapse in mechanics. And that's a ball that is going to be intercepted almost every single time that it's thrown.
Yeah.
And as a high level college quarterback, you just can't do that.
Yeah. And with 6 years experience, I mean, it's like, come on, man. Like you've done this before and we're still doing this. And thank God, they were able to still win the game and put together a great drive. But yes, terrible throw. Hopefully we don't see that again next year. The problem is we've seen it so much in the past. But going
Next
back,
week, next year, you're thinking Clifford's coming back for his 7th year.
yeah, going back to what you said about the offensive line, Caden Wallace, it's very frustrating because I think he has a lot of potential and skill, and a lot of people think that he's better suited at guard on the interior. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. They like him at tackle because, let's face it, we really don't have tackle depth. And not even depth, just even like quality starters. I don't know if
although Effner came in and did an okay job.
he did a good job. So now you have to think. I'm sure they're thinking about it. Do we slide Wallace in to a guard spot? Do we maybe kick Tangwall out to the right tackle spot? Effner can still be a utility guy that can pretty much be plug and play anywhere. I don't know because he was the major issue on the opposite side. I thought Olu Fashanu played tremendous at left tackle. And I know they're really high on him. And
star in the making.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you don't hear an offensive lineman's name, usually it's a good thing. Unless they're pointing out positives, but I don't think he got beat for any sacks. So that's my big thing is the right tackle right now. What are you going to do with that position? I think you're going to have Juice at center. You're going to have Olu at left tackle. Okay, so I think everything else, and even probably Salim Wormley at right guard. So now between left guard and right tackle, do you flip them? Do you put Effner at right tackle and keep Tangwall at left guard? Do you put Norzad at left guard and Tangwall at right tackle? There's a lot of things that can happen. I think they're going to kind of probably play out a couple different scenarios this week against Ohio.
Yep, and Norzad, of course, for the listening folks, the Ivy League transfer. Very similar to what we saw last year with Eric Wilson. Bigger, stronger, rangier guy than Eric Wilson.
More athletic.
Yeah, no doubt. But a really nice transfer coming in there to add that depth to the offensive line. And then Sal Wormley, like you mentioned, a guy that I think we all learned a lot more about in the offseason when it came out. I think it was the end of year press conference where James Franklin said, hey, listen, he was slated to be the starting guard last year before he got hurt. So I think it eased some concerns of fans when they thought, well, here's another guy who hasn't had any experience and wasn't going to be in the rotation last year. No, he was going to be the starter, and it's nice to see him earning his keep early on. So listen, offensive line, I thought was okay to good with a lot of moving pieces. New guys have not played on a line together. And I'll say I am cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I would say that's a good word to use. And I'm thinking about it right now, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember a false start. With a new group out there and a pretty hostile environment. There I don't think were many mental mistakes made, which is huge. Because that's a big part of being an offensive lineman. Not that I was or really know much about it, but I know you need to know everything that's going on, your assignments and all that. And they look mentally mentally in it. So we'll see where they go from here.
So that leads us back to the quarterback, which we say all this. Listen, Penn State did not do a great job scoring a ton of points, didn't get above 30 much last year. This year they did 35 points. That's great. 7 of that is based on a gift at the end of the half, right? 7 of it is a late touchdown drive, which we can talk a little bit about. Don't want to dwell on it, but if Brom handles things a little bit better from a time management standpoint on the Purdue side, that last drive probably does not happen, right? The clock expires before Penn State gets that umpteenth drive and the opportunity to win the game. But that was a great drive as well. So aside from 2 final drives of pass, one of which was certainly a prayer, things were not great. It was disjointed offensively. Some of that was drops, but some of that was Sean Clifford having an inability to manage the offense properly, wasn't proper footwork, didn't make the right throws, didn't make accurate throws when he did have a clean pocket and room to get into his throw. It's a major concern for me. So Drew Aller comes in when Sean Clifford has the runs or whatever he had going back into the locker room there.
Oh, man.
And he impressed. He impressed. He can spin the football. We knew that for sure. He had pretty good pocket presence. He stepped up in the pocket where Sean Clifford would get onto his back foot and back pedal. I'll say this. Love Joel Klatt. Love Gus Johnson. Think they're maybe the best booth in college football right now. Joel Klatt was absolutely right on the money a couple of times when talking about what the freshman quarterback is seeing and how the game is moving too quickly and what he didn't see in particular on that man coverage look where the linebacker went back into coverage and he had the opportunity to run on the 3rd and call it 5 and instead try to throw it into traffic, right? But that's okay. You can learn from that. He has some intangibles, and I think his footwork is already better than Sean Clifford. Tyler, I've been saying for a long time, hey, listen, Aller, he needs to prove himself, right? And Aller not going to come in and replace Sean Clifford right away. 6th year is 6th year. And to some extent, some of that may be true, but consider me converted, man. I mean, you have to see it at the next level. And I know it's not a straight line with a freshman quarterback at any level, right? It's the Jay Bruce effect. Jay Bruce came in and hit every fastball to the freaking moon for the Reds when he came up. And he was an MVP candidate for a month and a half. And then all of a sudden, pitchers learned how to throw him a curveball, and he was a 210 hitter, right? And so a little bit of that is overstated, but Aller came in, he did well. It was only a couple of series. But I believe that he could come in and be effective. Now, would it be a straight line? It absolutely would not, right? It would be up and down, and he would take his licks. And I don't know if now was the right time. But what I can tell you is Drew Aller does a lot of things that Sean Clifford cannot do. And if Sean Clifford is going to continue to throw pick sixes and take entire quarters where the offense goes into a shell, I get that he's the co-offensive player of the week, but there is real competition, a fire under his you-know-what, and a kid that could come in there tomorrow and do as good a job. I truly believe that. And I believe it based upon seeing it at the college level, right? And I'll let you go in a sec, but the last comment I'll make on that is I think so often we take what we hear coming from camp or from the media, and there's some great media folks that go to practice and see the last 15 minutes. But, these kids, after they leave high school, they go into a box and we never hear from them again unless the media relations director of Penn State, makes them open to us. So we didn't really know anything until he stepped out there on the field, even until the prior week when he was announced as the backup. But what he showed me the other day shows me that there is something there. And I think James Franklin should think long and hard about giving him first half time against Ohio next week.
Wow. First half time against Ohio, that would certainly be interesting. I think it'd be a good move again to get him keep playing because the way Sean Clifford's history has been, as we all know, injuries have always been a factor because of the way he plays and also interceptions and potentially being benched. Sean Clifford really wasn't being pushed last year. With all due respect to Taquan Roberson and Christian Veilleux, last year they weren't ready when he went down at Iowa. They just weren't. He wasn't being pushed. There was no competition for his spot. Now, as you mentioned, there is, and hopefully that elevates Clifford's game. But also, I think Drew Aller's really nipping at his heels right now. But for the coaching staff to make a change, there would have to be something pretty drastic to happen. And I thought step one would have been losing to Purdue, but obviously that didn't happen. Thank God. But yet I would love to see him first half reps against Ohio, because who's to say next week at Auburn, Clifford doesn't get hurt in the first series of the game, put him out there with live bullets, even though it's Ohio, put him out there in a 0-0 game, because that's what you're really prepping for the future with this guy. So that's how I look at it.
Are you surprised at my opinion on the matter?
No, because I know how good he is. And I've been trying to tell people, like, it's not
myself included,
yourself included, because so the Josh Allen, they compared him to Big Ben on the broadcast. I don't really see that. The Josh Allen comparison that's what I heard.
I don't see that, man. I really don't.
Okay, but that's what I heard.
Best
from
quarterback in the world.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, shoot for the stars, but where was I going with this?
You were talking about, were you surprised that I, have saw what I saw and have come to the conclusion?
I think because, Bob, I think that the people people know what Clifford is, and there, and Joe Klatt even said there's a reason, and I'm paraphrasing, there's a reason he's a 6-year quarterback, like you're still in college, and I don't really know if that's
that was good. Oh my goodness, that was a great line, Tyler. I believe what it was is, I know how this goes, with veteran multi-year quarterbacks. It's a love-hate, because you've been there for a while, and if you've been there for a while, it's because you haven't been good enough to leave.
Exactly. And in Sean Clifford's case, absolutely true. In Sean Clifford's case, he's using the COVID year. He's heading up the limitless NIL. For him, it's a no-brainer to stay. But at the same time, let's face it, it's because he's not really good enough to play at the next level. You have a guy under him that is certainly good enough to play at the next level, even though it's still 3 years away. But I am not surprised how good he looked in the sample size that we saw, just because I've heard it, I've seen it, not at this level, obviously, but he's just different. And we're probably only going to see him as 2 years as a starter at Penn State, because he's probably going to be a 3 and done. And I just hope we don't waste anything this year with him.
That would be good for Penn State, right? If he's leaving him for 3 years, it's a good thing.
But I just hope that we don't waste anything this year with him for an 8-4 type of season. What I'm trying to say is, if Penn State goes down, loses to Auburn, just say lose to Michigan, they're 4-2, I guess they probably play out the rest of October, Ohio State, Minnesota, whatever. But at some point, you really have to say, all right, we have three losses. Let's get this guy going. Let's get this train moving for next year and the year after. You know what I mean?
I hope he gets snaps prior to that. Because...
Well, I hope it's exactly. I hope it's not. He's not getting snaps because of the situation. But yeah, keep putting him in there, because, dude, I mean, look at what. And this is a little different, but Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant, that Clemson team was phenomenal. I mean, I think they were coming off of the national championship or something. But I mean, they started Kelly Bryant. They were playing both. After 4 games, Trevor Lawrence, the rest is history. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. And I certainly hope they continue to give him meaningful snaps.
Well, consider me impressed. I saw things in Drew Aller that are good enough to quarterback a Big Ten football team right now, today.
I will say this. I don't know how the game would have played out if Clifford never came back. And we'll never know. But having the experience that Clifford has, I think probably benefited Penn State in that game.
Here's the question. We know how the last drive went. I think experience was helpful there. Do you think that pick six gets thrown, which puts Purdue in the lead? Do you think that Penn State doesn't score another third quarter or early fourth quarter touchdown with Drew Aller running the offense perhaps a bit more efficiently? Do they need a last-minute comeback drive if Aller plays the entirety of the second half?
All great points that we'll never know. I mean, on Drew's first drive, technically they were going down the score. If Tyler Warren catches that ball, they're pretty much in the red zone, like just a couple plays in. On that third down, and a good learning experience, he tried firing it into Tinsley. Aller had a ton of room to take off, and the announcer said, it's just a freshman. Right. So he was moving the ball. I mean, it's not like that he wasn't moving the ball. So I'm guessing that if Warren would have held on to that, they probably would have put at least 3 up on the board. We'll never know. But he is fun to watch. He just spins it differently. It comes off his hand like a fastball, man. It's just different.
We'll keep an eye on that as we go along here. We'll talk about the defense on the other side. This is the Nittany Lions Sports Report. Bob Long, Tyler Galhouse. Thanks for being with us. Stay right here.
Dunphy Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfort Avenue.
Generation after generation. Our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfort Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dunphyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
Back here on the Nittany Lions Sports Report, your hosts, Bob Long, Tyler Galhouse, back for, I don't know, a 5th or 6th year doing this. This has been really fun. And a lot of Penn State talk over the years. It's been enjoyable and start of another great season. So we talk about the defense now, Tyler. I am going to start it with a close to home pitch, if you will. Absolutely brutal call against my man Abdul Carter in one of his first snaps as a collegiate athlete. Yeah. And ball is dropped. He's backup linebacker. Curtis Jacobs has taken him under his wing. He's wearing number 11, just Micah Parsons, LeVar Arrington. All the reports have been that he's been a real model citizen, coachable, working really hard, kind of making that step to the next level. And after what we're about to talk about, he was, on the sidelines, really firing up the crowd. First guy out there to look after Curtis Jacobs when he went down. We're Abdul Carter fans here on the show. But all that to say, a screen pass is dropped. The Purdue running back or slot receiver, I forget which, started going after the ball. Abdul Carter naturally further away from the football than the intended receiver who dropped it in his hands. He dives for it, gets the Purdue receiver in the helmet. I kind of can't believe, neither can the announcers, neither can Penn State fans, can't believe that they're actually reviewing it, and they kick him out of the game for targeting.
Well, problem number one was the referee never blew his whistle.
Yep.
So
it's a live football.
Carter did everything that he's taught to do, and that is play until you hear the whistle. Maybe he thought it was a fumble because the receiver wasn't that far up the line of scrimmage where, from his standpoint, maybe it looked like a backwards pass. He was going to get the ball. And the other part is he never even the view I got was like, yeah, his helmet hit the Purdue guy's helmet, but it's more like his shoulder too. And just a bizarre call. Like, I don't even the targeting rules are so you're good with words, Bob. You got a good vocab. inconsistent, I guess you could say. You just never know when a play is called. And I don't even know how you can – I don't like the fact that you can look at a play for targeting. This is my opinion, when there was no flag on the field.
Unfortunately, they can do that.
I just
They
think that
absolutely can.
if it's targeting, like you really like it should be so obvious that there's flags flying out, in my opinion. Because on
should
the
be
flip
egregious.
side,
It should be egregious and malicious in real time.
Yeah, and I just
be able to
didn't
see it.
Now, could they have gotten Abdul Carter with an unsportsmanlike late hit if they blew the whistle? Maybe. I don't know. But they never blew a whistle. I was so confused why they were reviewing the play. Like when the ref came on. I was so confused. And then they throw him out, which they shouldn't have. So they really made two mistakes. One, reviewing it, and two, throwing him out. Yep. And it gave Purdue, I think it would have been, was that their first down or second down?
I forget what
I can't remember, but it gave them 15 yards. They ended up scoring on that drive, I believe.
Yep.
So it was just very unfortunate. And, yeah, I mean, I was really excited to see him. We'll see plenty of Abdul Carter, including this week and for the next couple of years. But just an unbelievable way to start your college career.
Yep. The other guy I want to talk about is Joey Porter Jr., polarizing figure on the Penn State message boards and amongst Penn State fans this week. Surprising that your top cornerback gets targeted as much as he did, but it was broken down pretty well on the broadcast that basically Penn State is lining up their top two corners on one end of the field, regardless of where those receivers line up. It's not like he's just going to follow, what do they call it, Chuck Sizzle?
That's what Gus Johnson calls him.
Unbelievable. He does have great nicknames. GQJ for Jay Wright.
Yeah.
Man, he'll have to retire that one, unfortunately. But they targeted Joey Porter a lot. And I get it, right? He did hold. I think Purdue fans think that Penn State cornerbacks got away with a lot. I will give Purdue offense this credit and Aiden O'Connell. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'll give him this compliment. They put a lot of pressure on a defense. They get the ball out quick. Pass rush doesn't do too much against these guys. They give their receivers chances. They put them one-on-one with corners and just trust the quarterback to put the ball in a good spot and the receiver to go up and get it. And I will say that Penn State's cornerbacks, by and large, particularly in the second half, they did a great job matching physicality, getting in between the ball and the receiver, breaking up plays. Yes, it was physical. It really was physical coverage. And with a different officiating crew, more penalties could have been called. But I thought that Porter did an excellent job. And I came away excited with the number of targets that he got and how he acquitted himself. Now, could have made 2 interceptions. That's the next thing. Ball skills.
6.
Yep. But did a pretty darn good job of breaking up passes. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Joey Porter Jr. is we talked about him last week, potentially the first defensive back to be drafted in the first round from Penn State. I think he's off to a strong case for achieving that goal. Early on he was picked on and they were going after him, and even when he gave up a completion, he was like, it was like a perfect pass. He was right there for the tackle. And then in the second half, man, he just everything thrown at him he knocked down, it seemed like. And we're going to talk a lot about Joey Porter Jr., Jair Brown in the secondary. I thought Daquan Hardy played a really solid game. And outside of the punt where he couldn't down it at the one, where he literally had it in his hands and lost it. But outside of that, defensively, he's pretty much the reason that Penn State was able to get the ball there at the end and get down and score. He made a couple of nice plays, not letting the receiver come up with the reception. And
one he was beaten, and actually a better throw.
He underthrew him a little bit, right.
But I mean, you make it such if you're Daquan Hardy that a non-perfect throw becomes a mistake, right? And lesser corners would not have made that lesser throw be a mistake. And
Right.
to his credit, he had the ball skills. He didn't give up on the play and made a heck of a play on the football. You're right. That was
Right.
a huge breakup.
So, Penn State saw one of the few like spread throw almost every down offenses, whatever you want to call it, that they'll see. I mean, as you said, give like Purdue's offense is that they're set up well. I mean, and they're going up against probably the best secondary they'll see all year. But when it came down to it, they were unable to run for first downs. They couldn't get the first downs they needed to secure a win.
That's
And
right.
as you know, I was pretty upset with the Penn State defense for most of the game. But when they needed to make stops, they did, and I'll give them credit for that. Manny Diaz dialed up some nice plays late, bringing Dixon on a blitz that he sacked O'Connell. Because as we said, and I think you just mentioned, they get the ball out so quickly that your pass rush, even if you have a good pass rush, it's probably not going to do much against Purdue because of how quickly they get the ball out. So
that's a pretty good quarterback there.
he is.
Aiden O'Connell is
even though
solid.
he's a 6-year guy, he's pretty good.
That's right. Yes.
But he is a good quarterback. So and he made some throws that game too. Tight window, and they just couldn't pick up first downs when it mattered most.
I think the best compliment I can give O'Connell and really the Purdue offense is they put a ton of pressure on an opposing secondary, and they forced Penn State to be good for 60 minutes. I mean, that's coming at you full throttle.
Right.
The other thing about that 35-31 game, it's how did it get to be such a high-scoring game? It felt like Clifford was so bad for so long. But yeah, there were about 100 freaking possessions because nobody could run the ball effectively. They kept punting it back and forth to each other.
Right.
And then when the second half, both teams would just throw. They abandoned the run, couldn't get the big run when they needed it. And so, yeah, there were a ton of chances to get the football. No wonder you score, 4 or 5 touchdowns.
Sure. Yeah. But defensively, the defensive line, I don't know if it was again because of the scheme or that Purdue was putting out there, but they weren't able to get a lot of pressure. And a lot of these guys haven't played football in a while. Mustafa coming off of an injury. Adisa Isaac didn't play at all last year. Keem Beeman suspended last year. So I wasn't really impressed with the defensive line, but I think I know what they're capable of. And I'm hoping it was just a mix of rust and the opponent and what Purdue likes to do, which is why we really didn't see a dominant defensive line effort in that game.
Yeah, I am interested to see. I thought Manny Diaz got creative at times with not exactly bringing a ton of extra guys, but in disguising which guys they were actually bringing, right? So maybe back in that defensive end, if you will, or that outside linebacker coming from a down stance or being on the line of scrimmage, dropping him back, and then bringing another guy off the strong side, if you will, right? So overloading one end. I thought they did a nice job with that. Twisting and stunting, I thought we saw some of that as well. Right, there's that Manny Diaz flair with some of the same personnel that we saw from Brent Pry, who, by the way, Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion and Ricky Ronnie this past weekend, just to give an update on 2 former Penn State coordinators there. But I like it. I like it, man. I like what Manny Diaz does. There is some creativity. He likes to bring pressure. And you saw in Miami, he'll bring numbers, but he didn't do that as much at Penn State. It was more finding different creative ways to get guys into the backfield while bringing 4 or maybe 5. And that was great. I think it's exciting. I think it's something that it's a bit of a complex defense from what I can tell, just first time seeing it for 60 minutes. And I think guys will take time to get, up to speed on it. But I think it has a chance to be a pretty darn good defense. I was frustrated as well at times, as I'm sure a lot of fans were watching the defense at times. But the more I think about it, the more I go back and watch, I give a lot of credit to Purdue, and I think Penn State's going to continue to figure it out against lesser throwing teams. I think Manny Diaz is a heck of a hire, and I hope that the defense, continues to grow
Yeah.
into a new
Yeah,
iteration.
I think he's a great hire. I mean, he's got a great defensive pedigree. I'm curious to see how Penn State matches up against Auburn in 2 weeks, because you're going from a team like Purdue that loves to throw the ball to a team like Auburn who wants to pound it with their running backs. And I'm interested to see how he game plans for Auburn here in 2 weeks, because it's a complete 180 from what we game plan against Purdue.
All of a sudden, that's going to be a very important game to win as well. And I guess important for what, I guess, is the question, right? What's the end goal? Is it to make the college football playoff? Is it to secure a New Year's Six bowl game? Obviously, it's not going to help you in winning the Big Ten East. You'll have to beat Ohio State to do that and win the rest of your games. But point being is, Auburn loses that game to Penn State, it doesn't get any easier for them. And even if they win that game, that's a program that is picked to finish in the bottom half of the SEC West. The Razorbacks of Arkansas have gotten considerably better. Maybe LSU has certainly taken a step back. By the way, chef's kiss there. That was just phenomenal and could not happen to a better guy, a better coach there, and Brian Kelly. But, that's a tough game for Auburn. It's tough to see Auburn winning 8 or 9 games this year. And so, it's a big-time SEC opponent. Yes, it's on the road. But when you put it in that context, it's a game that Penn State kind of has to win, find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think, not to jump ahead to Auburn for next show, but
sorry to the Bobcats, by the way. They didn't get much run here tonight.
It's a very winnable game. And I don't want to say it's a 50-50 game, but I think Auburn's team last year that came up to Penn State was a better team than what they have this year. So, but again, it's, you're playing down at Auburn in Alabama, September, humidity and heat, and we still, who knows what Penn State team's going to show up and what Sean Clifford's going to show up. So until we know, which we won't until the game, that's what it's going to come down to. But it's an extremely winnable game. You have to like what you're going in to, because there's been a lot better Auburn teams over the years.
Sure have. Should be fun. 3:30 CBS. That's unique for Penn State to be on that game there. That'll be super exciting.
For now, it's unique.
You're right. Yep. Big Ten on CBS soon enough. By the way, CBS. I don't know if you're a big media contracts mogul, but that was like the best contract of all time for CBS. CBS paid orders of magnitude less for that time slot, and it was based upon timing and what the SEC was at the time and where the world of contracts were at that particular juncture. You will never see a contract that good again. I'm going to have a segment, I guess, some sort of media segment, right? We talked about Joe Buck and why Penn State was on Fox last week, which if you just missed us last week because Joe Buck joined ESPN and ended his contract early at Fox. Fox got the second pick in the Rota, where they would normally have just the first, the third, the fifth, and all the odds. So they took the second from ESPN. The first, they always take the Ohio State-Michigan game. So you're picking a week, and they want the best game of that week. So they got the second pick. They picked week 1, and they slotted this one into that Thursday night. So thanks to Joe Buck, that's why Penn State was on Fox. CBS.
That's why they're 1-0. Joe Buck.
That's why they're 1-0. That's right. And then CBS has had the most lucrative Saturday 3:30 p.m. One of the most lucrative contracts in the history of sports television. So that will end soon enough, and the Big Ten will take over that SEC 3:30 slot. All right, when we start talking media, though, maybe it's about time to shut her down. What do we miss? Anything else we need to talk about tonight?
No, just going to Ohio here. I'd like to see Penn State work on the things that they need to tune up, because you can't take anybody for granted in college football, and Ohio's already beat you once at home. back in 2012, I believe it was, right? So, but you kind of want to just prepare like it's any other game, but with that in mind, tighten everything up and get ready and use it as a springboard in the next week at Auburn.
Good stuff. We'll be looking forward to that one. It's a noon kickoff at Beaver Stadium, home opener. If you're going up there, enjoy yourself and be safe. Bob Long, Tyler Gelhaus here for the Nittany Lions Sports Report. As always, enjoy the football, and we'll talk to you next week.